and welcome. This is Artist on Art. I am your hostess, Nada Miljkovic. I have the great pleasure of speaking with Alexei Othernin-Girard. Alexei.
Perfect. Hi, Nada. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, me too. This is fabulous. Alexei is our, I believe, the second student in the Digital Arts and New Media series that's happening here on Artist on Art and Gamers on Game. In fact, Alexei is more on the gamer side of things, but I don't want to jump ahead of myself here. I want to talk more. Alexei is a graduating second year in the Digital Arts and New Media program here for your Master's in Fine Arts. Alexei comes here via Berkeley, where he studied literature, or was it English, really?
English specifically, yeah.
Specifically English. And somehow got into, well, I mean, not somehow. He is an interactive fiction author, playwright, and hoopy-frood.
That's Duncan.
Ah!
Sorry, no.
Well, you gotta tell me what a hoopy fruit is, but anyway.
Oh, I can't actually tell you what a hoopy fruit is, but no, I'm a game designer, artist, and writer. Yeah.
And you're fascinated by the intersection of interactivity, narrative, and systems.
Yep.
I want to break this down a little bit as we get going, but I want to first tell our lovely audience that you have worked in the fields of board game and video game design and write professionally. So, Alexei, how does one get from studying English? What do you even study in English? Yeah.
Well, so let's see. I did my undergrad at Berkeley. I graduated in 2002. I studied under Chris Nealon, who's a brilliant poet. The focus of the English degree at Berkeley at the time, and I don't know if it's the same, I imagine it's much the same, but the focus of the English degree at the time was very much on sort of close reading, literary theory, but from a very sort of social point of view. So an attempt to kind of grapple with the text, take it apart, and see how it worked. And that, I think, has really informed a lot of my work since then.
And so would you say there's a large part of psychology and anthropology when you're doing that type of thing? Or?
Yeah, I think the focus was a little bit more on, it was more on like bringing artists in dialogue with each other. So trying to kind of get a sense of how art and especially literature can be a conversation between artists as they sort of, grapple with different ideas and put them forth and then have other artists respond to them.
So, do you consider a writer an artist?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So when you say artist, you're talking about all media.
All media. Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
I only ask because sometimes writers, they don't call themselves artists.
It's true, and I think that's kind of a shame. I mean, as a game designer who also thinks of himself as an artist, what I do in design is, I definitely think of it as, an art, or at least having an artistic component. And, when I'm writing for a game, when I'm writing dialogue, when I'm writing any of that, I think there's absolutely an art to it. I do think that writers do themselves a disservice when they say that they're not artists, or when they kind of balk at that term. So,
sorry about that. Just
no problem.
Trying to get the camera going here, because this is a multimedia radio show here. We're not just broadcasting live, folks. We're capturing it in as many different ways as we possibly can. And Alexei, also being a multimedia artist, coming from English, again, getting his BA in English at UC Berkeley. And then what got you to get into the UCSC DANM program?
Into DANM. Well, so it's sort of a long, from Berkeley, it's about a 10-year, there was a kind of a 10-year journey to get into DANM. So very briefly, I graduated from Berkeley. I kind of wandered around for a while with no clear sense of what I wanted to do. And then I, pretty much by accident, ended up coming in contact with a man named Anthony Thompson, who had just started a tiny board game design company in Berkeley, which at the time that I applied there was called Thompson Industries, and very quickly rebranded itself as TableStar. And TableStar was a sort of startup board game design firm. The aim was to produce, I think, 5 games in their first year of production, of their first sort of year of business, and then see if they could turn an early success with one of those 5 games into sort of ongoing revenue. And we had a great idea for a series of board games that had to do with sort of combined kind of card game, a modular card game with very different board games. So you could buy a board game and you could buy cards from a different game and sort of put them together. And it was a really interesting idea, and we had a great time designing it, and it never sold at all.
Oh.
But, I worked for them for 2.5 years and had an incredible time, and really learned a tremendous amount. I got to work with some unbelievably smart people doing something I loved at, for an actual wage, which I think at the time, when Thompson suggested that I would be a salaried board game designer, I remember thinking that it was like someone had told me that I was going to be a unicorn. Like, it just seemed so absurd that I would be able to do that, so...
But you figure somebody's got to do it, so it might as well be me.
Yeah, exactly. It might as well be me, and I love it. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
So, yeah. And,
I mean, it's sad that it went down.
Yeah, but it was a great apprenticeship, and I learned a lot. So that was great. And then moving forward from that, I got a job at a company called Play First, which did sort of casual game design in San Francisco, and worked for them for a couple of years.
Casual game design.
Yes.
Explain that,
okay.
Alexei.
It's actually it's a pretty interesting. So, especially at the time, and I started at Play First in 2007. At the time, there was this very strong division between hardcore games, i.e., games that would be made for Xbox or PlayStation, and a casual market. And casual game players were generally female. They were generally professional, and there were people who were looking for a shorter, faster game experience that they could play on their lunch breaks or play in the evenings. And that's who we designed for. And it was an incredible experience. Yeah. Do you play a game called Diner Dash? Have you ever heard of it? No. That was Play First's big.
Diner Dash.
And
tell us about it, Alexei.
Diner Dash was a very sort of...
Because that demographic is me.
Is you? Okay. Well, yeah, I mean...
And I played Tetris.
It's funny because Tetris is... absolutely a casual game. You can sit down with Tetris and you can play for 15 minutes and have an incredible experience and then put it down and go somewhere else. You can also, if you feel like it, throw hours and hours and hours of your life at it and watch it just sort of get better and faster and more interesting. But the casual play is and should be a really important part of the way that people approach Tetris. And I think one of the nice things now is that people are starting to realize that there doesn't need to be such a sort of distinct divide between the casual and the hardcore market. So people that there's kind of a blending together of those two, like that used to be really separate.
Right. Well, that's almost like modern life. Everything's becoming
is blending
porous.
together.
Yeah,
it's true.
Whether it's food or game design or game and art.
Right, exactly. So,
but wait, before we get off onto that big question, Alexei Othenin-Girard, and y'all are listening to Artist on Art here on KZSC Santa Cruz, the greatest radio station in the world, basically.
Potentially,
yeah. No, potentially. It is.
Just absolutely.
Absolutely.
There you go. You heard it here, people.
Alexei, Dining and Dash Dine?
Diner Dash.
That was the game. How did you play it?
Oh, so it was... I'm
intrigued.
So it was a game about... It was what was known as a time management game, which meant that you had sort of a series... The fiction was that you were a plucky waitress who was running her own cafe, and you had customers who came in on one side, and you had to seat them, take their order, get them their food... clean their get them their check, clean their table, and then seat someone else there. And it was a pretty simple sort of game cycle. This find customers, figure out how long they can wait before they get too mad, feed them, give them food, give them their check, get them out of there, clean their place so that you have space to move more people in. And if you lose too many people, because your customers would leave if they got too upset, and if you lost too many customers, you would fail the level and have to do it over again. And it was
sounds like
it was sort of Tetris-like. I mean, it's funny because I had my boss while I was at Play First talked about the fact that he had been a sort of a short order cook at some point in his past, and he was like, "This game is like my nightmare. This game is
exactly
it's so stressful and so." But at the same time, like Tetris, I think it's a game that is very easy to sort of find flow in. You kind of once you get the rhythm of the game, and you learn that pretty organically. Once you get that, you can play for level after level after level, and it just swings by because you're caught up in it, and it's very simple to kind of keep yourself caught up in it. So.
Well, I also, Alexei, was a waitress and did have to do all of those things in a very small cafe type place, and it sometimes when I was in the flow it was great, but when I wasn't, it was a
awful.
nightmare.
So and I mean that definitely we had people who had both reactions. Our players would definitely, some of them were just it was so easy for them and so kind of so absorbing in this really delightful way, and they really enjoyed it. And then other people would play for 5 minutes and just say, "This is so stressful." All these angry people with their little mad clouds of anger animation coming out of their heads. I don't want to deal with this. They just kind of bug out.
Well, it's funny if you were an experienced waiter or waitress, maybe that would change the gameplay.
Right? Would it help you? I don't think we ever did, or make it worse. Right. Like you'd really feel it. I don't think we ever did an actual study on that, but looking back, I sort of wish we had. So.
Well, I worked at a Dilly Deli.
I don't know what that is.
It was in Indiana, and I had dreams of making Subway sandwiches. We would have people out the door and around the block, waiting for the submarine at noon. It was like the witching hour, and I would have to make submarines. That was so fast. I think that I'm just thinking of a video game right now.
So the desire to take any repetitive task and turn it into a video game is very strong. I definitely,
Okay, so how did you get from gameplay
to DANM? So basically, I mean, what it came down to was I had a friend who started the program, and
Do you want to mention names?
What? Oh, this was Aaron Reed. Who was graduated last year, and who
was on Artist on Art and Augmented Reality,
and he's an incredible game designer. He's an incredible writer. He's a great game designer.
We were just talking about him for prom week.
I had
exactly. three out of 4. Aaron was my only guy that I didn't get from prom week.
Got it.
But next time I'm going to get him. I'm going to nail him down.
Definitely.
Because now he's getting his PhD here in the games and playable media.
Into the PhD program. Yeah. So no, and I knew him before. I actually was a beta tester on his big game that he did before he started at Santa Cruz, a game called Blue Lacuna, which I very, very highly recommend that everyone play.
How do you say it?
Blue Lacuna, Lacuna. And it's this
so lacuna, like an eye, a
hiatus, a gap, and it's a gorgeous game about Blue Lacuna. It's sort of like very meditative literary piece of interactive fiction where you sort of explore an island. It's almost Myst-like. You sort of explore an island. There are puzzles. He does this incredible thing where there are very few puzzles that kind of halt your progress. Solving the puzzles isn't about kind of getting, opening the door, getting to the next area. But instead, when you solve the puzzles, you realize that you've learned a piece of this story. And so as you go through, you have, the puzzles that you find and discover and solve, you have this moment of, oh, I see what's happening. And it's just so effective and powerful. So
Alexei Othernin-Girard, talking about Aaron Reed, a former DANMite, also graduate, who created a game called Blue Lacuna.
Right. And so he'd started at the program, and I was looking for something to do. I'd done 2 years at Play First and had a really good time, was sort of Play First had a clear vision of what they wanted to be doing, and after a couple years of making games sort of in the Diner Dash mold, I kind of came to realize that I wanted to be working on something else. So I was starting to think about, what's my next move going to be, and when Aaron started at DANM in, I guess it must have been
2009,
yeah. I sort of found out about it, and I was looking at grad programs already and sort of saw DANM, looked at the people who were here, looked at what the curriculum looked like, and was just like, no, this is the place that I need to be. So
excellent.
Yeah, it was I think it's been I know that it's been an incredible experience. So I've gotten to do all kinds of crazy stuff that I would not have been able to do otherwise. So.
Okay, Alexei. Give us a couple of the crazy stuff.
Okay, what have I done that's been crazy? So my first quarter at DANM, and then again my third quarter, I put a project together called Control Scheme, which I showed at Open Studios here on campus. And Control Scheme involves using a wireless Arduino setup to basically allow one person with a little simple Atari joystick to control the movements of another person. So it's not mind control, it's not electric shocks. For some reason,
that's the first thing that
when I describe this project, everyone's like, "Do you implant electrodes in their skin?"
That's exactly what came to my mind.
And I'm like, "No, that's evil." I tried really hard not to be evil. No, it's pretty. The technology is actually really simple. It's a belt that you wear that has panels on it that vibrate depending on the directional instruction that you're getting from the controller. It's very simple, so it's not really control. It's more suggest. But
So does the controller suggester?
Right.
Do they have like a map? Do they have like a scheme that they're moving the person through?
The first time I did it, which was probably, I would say, the more successful outing. The first time I did it, I had players sit down at a table with a little screen, and they could see on the screen me in a room filled with objects. And as they used the joystick, I would move around the room, and then they could press a button to make me interact with the objects in the room. And
how would that vibrate?
And what? Oh, if you press the button, then all of the panels vibrate.
It all
vibrates, and then that's like pick it up or
pick it
do
up
something
or stand
with
here
it.
vibrating.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a really successful project, and people really got into it. And they didn't. It wasn't clear sort of what the physical relationship was between the controller and the controllee. They didn't know that I was actually just sort of on the other side of a door nearby and could hear them. So there's sort of a performative aspect where like I could hear them and hear what they were expecting from me, and then make decisions as to whether or not I was gonna, comply with their directions or, ignore them or do something different.
This is getting pretty deep, Alexei.
It was a really successful project. I was really proud of it, and
Control Scheme, folks. You heard it here.
Control Scheme, yeah. I'd actually, that's definitely a project that I'd love to kind of run with a little bit more. So
yeah. I could see a lot with that, especially when you start talking about role playing.
Right. Well, and that's there's definitely sort of a whole element of, when I was doing it, I really kind of focused more on the interpersonal, like this. I wanted to get this image across of them controlling me directly, right? That they knew that I was receiving their direction.
The interactivity was totally obvious.
Right, exactly.
Because sometimes, folks, just so you know, interactivity could be happening and you don't know it.
And you don't even know it, right?
And it's a big problem for interactivity artists is to make sure
that people understand
they're
what's
triggering
going on
whatever's...
Yeah.
And
so, adding sort of the role-playing component, I think, is interesting for the project sort of down the line.
Yeah.
But it adds sort of a layer of abstraction, or it kind of changes the nature of that controllee. The trick about it, it's funny because the people could see really clearly that they were having an effect on me. They could see really clearly that they were moving me around this space, but I was wearing the belt under my sweater, so they didn't see why. They couldn't see like what it was
even
that was
better.
Right. So the whole thing had this nicely mysterious and magical kind of experience to it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Alexei Othernin-Girard is here on Artists and Art, and we'll be bridging over into Gamers on Game right now, actually. And welcome back to Gamers on Game. I am joined here in the studio with Alexei Othenin-Girard. Alexei, welcome to Gamers on Game.
Well, thank you.
Ah!
It's just like artists on art, yet subtly different.
Funny you should mention that, because I want to ask you, when I came into the DANM class and asked all of you, because I'm hoping to have every graduating DANMite here within the next couple months. Alexei, I offered Artists on Art or Gamers on Game. What made you veer towards Gamers on Game?
Pure practicality.
Pure practicality.
And I'll tell you why. That DANM is split, as I think you know, into 4 different research groups. And
I know, but let's tell the audience.
So the 4 research groups, there's one that I always forget, and I'm going to feel terrible.
No, because I've got it right here.
Oh,
so
great.
Don't worry.
So it's mechatronics, playable media, which is my research group, performative technology,
and participatory
culture. That's it.
Culture.
Sorry, all the participatory culture people, I forget. Anyway, so, and of those, the people who do sort of specifically game type experiences are in the minority compared to the people who definitely fall into the art camp and fall much less into the game camp. So I figured since I definitely think of game design as an art and games as sort of art objects, I felt like it was just as easy for me to talk about them in Gamers on Games as it would be for me to talk about them on Artists on Art. So that was basically my thought process.
Right. So beyond practicality, let's talk theoretically.
Okay.
You consider yourself an artist?
Yes, very much so.
And why?
Because I think the things that I grapple with when I'm designing a game are the same things, I hope, are the same things that, a more, we'll say, traditional artist grapples with when they make art. Games are an evocative, emotional experience, or they can be. And the thing that I'm sort of starting to understand is that in game design, your palette is your rule set, effectively. Art is a really important component of games. Visual art, sound design, all are really important, but as the designer, the artistic thing that you bring to the process is an understanding of what are the rules of this game, what is the system that you're designing, and what effect is that going to have on your players? What emotional response are you going to get from your players? And I feel like there's no difference between me developing a rule set that's going to have, that's going to evoke something for my players, and, a visual artist painting a painting to have a similar effect on their audience.
So I'm hearing you, Alexei Othernin-Girard.
It's long.
It's a great name. Alexei, for you, art evokes something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could it be an emotion or an idea?
Sure,
either.
Certainly.
Okay. As a game designer, you are evoking the desire to play.
Right. Well, among other things, I think over so first of all, there's sort of the game design is so broad now. We think of game designers in video games, we think of them in board games, we think of them in sort of the alternate reality games area, which is a place that I'm experimenting in right now.
What is alternate reality games?
Alternate reality games are a whole kind of, they get called a bunch of different things, pervasive games or unbounded games sometimes, and basically it's the idea of a game experience that you have that tries to kind of break down the boundaries between your game experience and your living experience. So
role-playing
in
the physical.
Yeah, role-playing, sort of, there are components of the live-action role-playing in there. There's a technological component. A lot of alternate reality games reach their players or communicate with their players technologically. But the way that I've actually heard it described is an alternate reality game is like a live-action role-playing game in which you play yourself. You are bringing your own persona into the game and kind of voluntarily allowing yourself to believe that the events of the game are somehow real, and then you allow those events to have an impact or an influence on your life. And those, that can be. There are some ARGs that kind of touch your life and then flit away, and then there are others that are very involving and absorbing.
Fascinating.
It's a whole
this is of
realm
course
of design.
Different from augmented reality.
Right.
Or blended reality.
So augmented or blended reality is more is again traditionally more interested in or associated with using a technological object as kind of a window through which a digital component gets added or overlaid onto the real world. Alternate reality games do some interestingly similar things theoretically, but it much less has to do with sort of moving a window around to see, and much more to do with I've received a communication from a game player, from a non-player character, a game figure, and now I'm going to go somewhere and have an interaction that might seem really normal or seem really mundane, but is invested with a lot of significance, is sort of overlaid with significance because I know why I'm doing this secret thing.
Right.
So that's
it's even more immersive than augmented reality.
That would be...
that's a place of discussion.
I think that would be a place of discussion. I would probably say yes. That right now, because, again, I mean, alternate reality games trace themselves back to, I think, Majestic is commonly considered to be the first alternate reality game, and that came out in 97 or 98. So it's young, but augmented reality is like 5 years old. So, insofar as augmented reality games are just starting to kind of find their feet as a medium, augmented reality is, just learning to crawl. It's very much, I think it has a tremendous amount of potential. I actually think the two forms are probably just going to fuse at some point.
But they sound like
there are components of both that will come very neatly together. So
you were going through a list.
Oh, right. Well, so video games, board games, alternate reality games, big games, which is a whole category of games that are played in urban spaces by a lot of people. We see capture the flag games, or, these like all city tag games spring up. There's a group in San Francisco called SF0 that runs a yearly, I think bi-yearly, event called Journey to the End of Night, which is this like all city zombie economics tag game where you start as a runner and then a chaser tags you and then you become a chaser. So by the end there are very few runners and everyone's chasers. It's crazy, but
have you played?
It's a ton
this
of fun.
game?
I have played. I've actually run
really
Journey
fun.
to the End of Night once and won once. Well, we came in. We sort of we straggled in. We played very cautiously and straggled in right at the end, but made it and had a great time. So
you are listening to Alexei Othenin-Girard here on Gamers on Game on KZSC Santa Cruz. I am your hostess, Nada Miljkovic with the mostess, and Alexei is a game designer and writer who is graduating in the Digital Arts and New Media program this June. And what is the name of your project?
My project is called Mystery Play.
Mystery Play.
An apocalyptic celebration.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Apocalyptic celebrations. Party like it's 1999.
Yeah, basically. Or party like it's 2012. We have yet another apocalypse to look forward to this year. It's great. They happen practically every year. There was one last year. There's one this year.
Then it got delayed.
I know. Well, they're never on time, so.
And tell us a little bit about your piece.
Well, Mystery Play is I'm calling it a minimally multiplayer alternate reality game.
Minimally multiplayer, which means it can do one.
It has a very limited number of players. The idea is my interest in designing games, as I may have betrayed earlier, is really in evoking an emotional response from players. I'm really curious about, how do games touch people? How do rule systems, which I think people think of as being fairly dry, but I see as being really evocative, how do those things affect people? And so what I wanted to do while I had the chance in grad school was make a game that would let me focus on a very small number of players and kind of build a game experience that would make them feel really central. One of the problems that I've seen with alternate reality games in general, because they tend to appeal to a huge number of players, 10,000, 20,000 players. And there's a problem there where a few people end up becoming sort of key players in the ARG, and everybody else sort of floats along and watches the key players do their cool thing. And so for Mystery Play, I really wanted to try to narrow the scope down to the point where I could deal with just a few players, but make all of them feel like they were having this really deep experience. So
and how long is the gameplay that you've designed?
It will mystery play takes 1 week to complete.
1 week.
Yep.
And you're hoping to get how many people through? How many weeks are you going to be doing this for?
Well, I'm going to be running it. I'm not sure how much to say because I want to keep it a secret. But I will run it. My plan is to run it twice and run for 2 weeks and to have about 6 people go through the experience.
Okay, so Alexei, how do you become one of those people?
Well, you have to contact me.
You have
we'll
to
take
contact.
it from there.
How can someone contact you?
The best way to contact me is probably just drop me an email at Othenin, OTHAOTHENIN at UCSC.edu.
All right, cool. All right, so you'll then, what will you be showing at the DANM
At the
exhibition?
DANM M.F.A. So there are components of the game that involve having my players in and around that space. So people will sort of see my players as they are playing the game in that space.
So you're going to have people playing during the
exhibition.
Okay, so the exhibition, which is called "I've Got Something on Your Mind." I like that. April 28th through 29th, and then again May 3rd through 6th.
Yep.
Again, this is the DANM M.F.A. Exhibition 2012. The big reception, the big yuha, which was massive last year. Like people falling off the terraces there, was Friday, May 4th. It's going to be Friday, May 4th, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. The gallery hours are open 10 a.m. through 4 p.m. I'd say this is some of the best, funnest interactive, a lot of interactivity shows around. And it's all at the Dark,
at the Digital Arts Research Center.
Over in front of the Art Barns, and which they completely eradicated their view of the ocean.
Man, people are still smarting about that, aren't they?
Why would artists need to have a beautiful view?
I had this whole plan when I got to DANM to cover the north face of the Dark building with like panels that would pipe a view from the other side of the building so that the art kids would stop complaining about the fact that we'd ruined their view.
Well, they need to be building their imaginations anyways.
Anyway, exactly. Can't they build like crow's nests or something? Like they should just like build tall towers and go up there for the view if they want it so much.
Well, there you go. I want to talk about the people, current students. Right. There's how many? 12 of you?
It's a relatively large cohort this year, which is nice.
10, 11 people.
And yeah, that's right. And I have to say that I love my cohort, and they are some of the most intelligent and talented and genius and creative people I have ever met. So
that's so wonderful.
I'm so
Alexei.
lucky to be in this group. I feel like we have a pretty good cohort. Esprit de corps, like we have a pretty good cohort spirit. So
say that again.
Esprit de corps, like
esprit de corps. Esprit de corps. The spirit of the heart.
Right.
So Duncan Bozeman, tell us quick.
Oh, Duncan is a brilliant interactive fiction designer,
playwright.
He's a playwright.
And what's the Hoopy Frood?
Oh, so this is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. A Hoopy Frood is, if I remember my translation correctly, a really, 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 really together guy.
Right on. So Alexei Othernin-Girard.
Here's a guy who really knows where his towel is.
That's the thing. You got to know where the one towel that you have. Daniel Christopher.
Awesome guy, very interested in doing these like large-scale interactive sculptural exhibitions. People should keep a lookout. They're going to be beautiful, and I'm sure super alien and weird.
Jesse Fulton.
Jesse Fulton is doing an awesome. I'm not 100% certain what Jesse's thesis is now that I think about it. He's done some really interesting work with social media. He's really interested in the way that people present themselves online.
I bet he was in the participatory culture.
Yeah, I think he's in participatory culture, and I'm pretty sure that his project revolves around kind of altering or manipulating the way that that audience members present themselves online. So. Jesse, forgive me for not knowing what your thesis is.
Sabrina, she was on last week. We're going to have her.
She's our spectacular.
Yes. Speckles. Kitties.
Kitties. Yes.
Heather Logus.
Heather Logus, another person in Playable Media with Duncan and I. Heather is a game designer. and actually a very close friend of mine, and she is doing a project. She's doing this really interesting project that is a game about stillness. She's doing a game about sort of contemplation and reflection and meditation. I think it's going to be a really beautiful experience.
Well, it's interesting because, Mike Traynor, his M.F.A. project, Mike Traynor?
Yeah.
He's one of the prom week guys. That was his game.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
it was called Reflection, I believe.
Huh. I hope that Heather, I'll put the two of them together. I mean, so Heather and all of the Playable Media people are also sort of affiliated with Expressive Intelligence Studio. So
right.
we're very cross-disciplinary there.
Lucky duckies. Because I wasn't around when I was a DANMite. Emily Martinez.
Emily is an absolute genius, and her project, she's doing this beautiful kind of visual... It's going to be a projected piece, but it's going to be looking at like branching flow in narrative and kind of neural networks and allowing people to navigate this like kind of sensory overload event.
Right. And there's she's going to have some kind of interactivity with brainwaves?
No, wait. Natalie or Emily?
Oh, we were talking about Emily.
Oh, yes. No, Natalie's project is brainwaves. Emily's project is visual overload.
Right. Cool.
And again, if any of the people in DANM are listening to this and I'm misrepresenting your thesis, I'm so sorry.
Okay, so Natalie McKeever,
right? She's
doing the brain waves
this
interactivity.
Really interesting kind of biorhythm feedback project with like pulling in your heartbeat and echoing it back to you, and that's going to be. I think that's. I'm going to be surprised if somebody doesn't pass out from being
excited,
overwhelmed by her project.
Helen Park.
Helen is actually, I'm not 100% certain what she's showing at the thesis show. Helen's thesis project is actually going to happen, I think, a little bit after the thesis show. She's working with a group of students in New York on a project. Helen's fascinated and really inspired by kind of boundary and territorialism and these questions of immigration and migrant experience. And she's working on a project to kind of bring a group of students just about like getting migrant student experiences at the kind of high school level and building art around those. And I think that's going to be a really powerful project. So.
Okay, James Pollock.
James, another Playable Media person, is doing a project about a project which I believe is still called Will You Be There When I Die, which is about shared virtual, sort of shared virtual space experience.
All right.
Building and manipulating virtual spaces and watching other people do the same. And
the only reason we're calling Jolie last is because that's how her name comes in the, the spelling. Jolie Ruel.
Oh my God! Of course, Jolie is doing the culmination of two years of work. We've watched her work on. She has a stop motion animation piece called Choices that she's been working diligently on for 2 years, and I'm so excited to see it. We've been watching. We've seen stills. We've seen characters. We've seen. She's like done all of the sort of clay maquettes herself, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be really disconcerting. I really highly recommend watching that because that's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And all of these wonderful projects will be available for purview, your audience participation
for free.
Good thing to say
yes.
that. April 28th through 29th and May 3rd through 6th. Again, the reception, the Big Bang, is Friday, May 4th, 5:30 to 8:30, and gallery hours are 10 a.m. through 4 p.m. This, again, folks, is the DANM M.F.A. exhibition for 2012. I've got something on your mind over here at the Dark at UCSC. Alexei Othernin-Girard, we just have a few more minutes before we got to say goodbye, and our lovely listening audience will get to hear some Middle Eastern unfiltered Camels music.
Ooh.
Tell me, what do you see happening after graduation?
For me, or sort of in general?
For you.
Oh, okay.
Other than the apocalypse.
Right, because I'm figuring I graduate and then I have like 3 months and then it's the apocalypse. So I'm not making long-term plans. No, I'm teasing, of course. Well, my plan is actually to hopefully get back into sort of professional game design. It's something that I really love. It's something that I've been lucky enough to do while I've been here at Santa Cruz. And yeah, it's something that I'd love to get back to. So there's, it's just, there's so much going on in that realm right now, and there's so many brilliant people, and they're doing so much work. And it's like every day I get a sort of flag in my inbox that's like, hey, someone made a 5-minute game that will make you cry, and I play it and I cry, and I'm like, this person's a genius.
Oh, you gotta send this to me.
Oh, there's so much.
I'm all about the crying.
Oh, there's so much stuff. Yeah. Oh God. Off
and
the top
they're
of my
coming
head.
everywhere. Santa Cruz has got a teeming game industry.
Big game population. San Francisco has a big game population. So now is the time, and this is the place. And so I feel incredibly lucky that I've gotten to be part of DANM for 2 years and get to work with all of these people. And I'm really looking forward to sort of taking that out and back into the video game world and making things that are really spectacular.
Wonderful.
I think it's right there.
And we hope you'll continue with your control scheme.
Yes.
There's a lot you can do with that.
That would be definitely another project for me. So I'd love to take it into a gallery space. I'd love to sort of do it a little bit more formally.
So you mentioned that with the control scheme, you've got a belt that is, it sounds like blue.
It's Arduino. It's like Arduino Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. Tell us what an Arduino is.
Oh man, Arduino is the best thing since sliced bread. An Arduino is a little it's probably 3-inch by 2-inch little microcontroller. How can I describe it? It's basically the smallest computer that you have access to the insides of. So if you want to automate something, if you want to, it runs on a very simple coding language called Arduino, which is a version of processing, which is a very simple version of Java. So it's like 3 layers of simplification to get you to do what you need to do. And I can't recommend enough, buy a kit, especially, if you have like a 5-year-old boy or girl, buy an Arduino kit now. They're like $35, and it's every science project you could ever want, and your kid will love it and build stuff. And by the time they're in 10th grade, they'll have built a robot, and that'll be great because the robot can do your chores or
Not
whatever,
just a robot, an interactive robot that does what you want it to do, because you can program it with a simple little USB cord.
With a little USB cord. And it's so easy to use, and it's such a powerful technology for people because it really gives you a tremendous amount of access to the underlying structure.
And the Arduinos are out of Italy. That's why it's got the weird name.
It's true. Yes.
So just so everybody know. Hey, listen, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Gamers on Game. We've come to an end here. It's been a great pleasure speaking with Alexei Othenin-Girard. Not only is he an artist, but he's also a gamer, and it's been a really, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a huge pleasure. So.
Oh, thanks. If you missed any part of this broadcast, do not worry. You can go on to artistonart.com and see the whole thing, hear the whole thing, see Alexei's lovely face, and all the other archives, all the other guests that have been on over the years. Hey, everybody, please stay tuned for Unfiltered Camels. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.